Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you're just really good at avoiding the things that make you uncomfortable. Think about it. You sit down to finally get some work done, and suddenly, cleaning your entire room feels extremely important. You open your laptop to start one task, and somehow, 20 minutes later, you're watching a video you didn't even search for. You tell yourself you'll start in 5 minutes, then 5 minutes becomes 30, then an hour, and somehow you've spent more energy avoiding the task than the task would have taken to complete. So you call yourself lazy. But what if that's not what's actually happening? Because sometimes you're not avoiding the work, you're avoiding how the work makes you feel. And that's a very different problem. Your brain doesn't always choose what's important. It often chooses what's comfortable, familiar, and immediately rewarding. So when a task feels confusing, overwhelming, boring, or emotionally threatening, your brain starts looking for an escape. Not because you're incapable, because escape feels better right now. And your brain is very good at choosing right now. That's why checking your phone suddenly feels irresistible, why organizing your desk feels productive, why one short video becomes 20. You suddenly become interested in doing literally anything except the one thing you actually need to do. And here's where the cycle begins. The task feels uncomfortable, so you avoid it. Avoiding gives you temporary relief, and that relief teaches your brain, good decision, we should do that again. So the next time you see the task, the discomfort comes back even faster. You avoid again. Now the deadline is closer. The task feels even bigger. You feel guilty. You feel anxious. And because those feelings are even worse, you avoid it again. Discomfort, avoidance, temporary relief, more anxiety, more avoidance. And eventually, you look at the unfinished task and think, why am I so lazy? But maybe laziness isn't the real problem. Maybe you're stuck in an avoidance loop, and the first step out isn't forcing yourself to suddenly become a disciplined person. It's figuring out what you're actually trying to escape. Because sometimes the task itself isn't scary, it's what the task represents. Maybe you're afraid you'll fail. Maybe you're afraid your work won't be good enough. Maybe you're overwhelmed because you don't know where to start. Or maybe you've been putting it off for so long that starting now feels embarrassing. Sometimes your brain chooses something easier because if you never start, you never have to find out whether you are capable of doing it, and that can feel strangely safe. But avoiding discomfort doesn't make it disappear. It usually makes it grow. So instead of trying to force yourself to just do it, make the first step so small that your brain doesn't feel the need to fight it. Don't write the entire assignment. Open the document. Don't clean the entire room. Put one thing away. Don't work for 3 hours. Work for 5 minutes. The goal isn't to finish. The goal is to begin. Because starting changes the relationship you have with the task. Before you begin, your brain imagines everything that could go wrong. Once you start, you finally have something real to work with. And sometimes the thing you were avoiding isn't nearly as difficult as the version of it that existed inside your head. There's another reason difficult tasks can feel so threatening. Sometimes you turn one task into a judgment about yourself. If I can't do this, maybe I'm not smart enough. If I struggle with this, maybe I'm not capable. If I fail, what does that say about me? Now you're not just doing a task, you're trying to protect your identity. No wonder your brain wants to escape.
So remind yourself, a difficult task is just a difficult task. It isn't a measurement of your worth. You can struggle and still be capable. You can fail at something without becoming a failure. And once you separate the task from your identity, it often becomes much easier to begin. Then make avoidance slightly harder. Your phone doesn't need to be beside you. Your notifications don't need to be available every few seconds. You don't need 15 tabs open while you're trying to focus. You don't have to rely entirely on willpower when you can change your environment. Make the distraction inconvenient. Make the first step easy. Give your brain fewer reasons to escape. But perhaps the most important thing is this: stop waiting to feel ready. You probably won't. There will always be a part of you that would rather start tomorrow. That's normal. Motivation often doesn't come before action. Sometimes it comes after you've already begun. You start for 5 minutes, then you realize it's not as terrible as you imagined. You continue for another 10, and suddenly the thing you spent 3 days avoiding is finally moving forward. So if you keep calling yourself lazy, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what am I actually avoiding? Is it the task, or is it the possibility of failing? The fear of doing it badly, the feeling of being overwhelmed, the discomfort of not knowing where to begin? Because once you understand what you're really running from, you can finally stop fighting yourself. You don't need to become a completely different person. You don't need perfect discipline. You don't need endless motivation. You just need to make the next step feel safe enough to take. Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you've been protecting yourself from discomfort in a way that no longer helps you. And the goal isn't to hate yourself into becoming productive. It's to understand yourself well enough that you no longer need to run from every difficult feeling. So the next time you catch yourself avoiding something important, don't immediately say, "I'm lazy." Ask yourself something better. What am I afraid I'll feel if I actually start? Because sometimes the moment you answer that question honestly, the task becomes a little less frightening, and you realize something important. You weren't incapable of moving forward. You were just trying very hard not to feel something. And now that you understand that, you can finally choose what happens next.